half-assed reporter. And we're taking an afternoon off to pop in to the Lisson gallery. Well, we're going to look at a show by Stanley Whitney in color. I drove by here as it was late on a Friday night and the gallery was closed, but I spoke to a young gentleman out in front, and well, he told me that this was a show of, I think, Stanley's paintings from the 80s and 90s. Oh, and his drawings. I picked up the gallery guide, and from what I can see, all of these pieces are from the late 90s, except the works on paper. This is untitled, from 2013, crayon on paper, 19 by 27. And well, it's always interesting to see people's drawings when you know their paintings. And yeah, Stanley's a lot more gestural, it seems, with his drawings. This is untitled, 1997. 75 by 88 3/4 inches. Well, I started to see work by Stanley probably about 12 or 15 years ago. And I think I've probably gone in and reported on at least a couple of his shows that he had with feature. And I snagged him and got him to talk a little bit. And since then I've met him a couple of times and had some little chats. And well, one of the great things is Stanley was talking about being a jazz fan. And I think he may have been from Philadelphia, somewhere in around the greater Philly area. And when he was a young student, he used to come into New York to go to some of the jazz clubs, and one of the jazz clubs he frequented was the 5 Spot, which is near Cooper Union at the top of the Bowery. This is titled After Munch, 1997, oil on linen. This is 72 3/4 by 85 1/4. Well, so Stanley is probably in his late teens, early 20s, visiting the jazz clubs, and like I said, particularly the 5 Spot. And well, probably about 20 years later, he had a studio just across the street from there. And I think he probably painted in that studio for, well, several years. So it's always interesting to kind of note how people's histories or their locations kind of affect the way they develop their careers. Anyway, that was all very close to 10th Street, and that was one of the centers of the art scene in the 50s, and a lot of the people like William de Kooning, Helen Frankenthaler, Milton Resnick, Alfred Jensen, all those people lived on or around 10th Street. One of the things I like about this earlier body of work is that the way that he's layering on his colors and these kinds of sections of gestural, or they're calling them tesserae, which is like a tile. This relates more to his drawings, but we're going to go see another show of his more recent paintings, and well, it'll be instructive to kind of notice how he developed from this into a different approach to his layering and building up his planes of color. Oh, this is a nice one. This is titled Untitled, 1998, oil and linen, 72 by 85. Well, yeah. Getting back to the jazz thing, I actually asked Stanley about his compositional structures, and in a certain way, they're kind of like a music score. Oh, this is nice. Now look at this particular section here. He started out with a very brilliant cad red light, maybe a vermilion, and then he's overlaid that with that kind of electric pistachio green. Also, note the kind of the narrow vertical sections. A lot of that gets distilled out in the work we'll see at the next space. Okay, the drawings are all untitled, and these are all 2013 crayon on paper. Well, I like the way that these are very urgent, almost childlike, and well, the other thing is that Stanley's a very nice guy, very friendly, very approachable guy, and this kind of free-form, open, spontaneous approach is kind of the way that he approaches people in general as well. Okay, folks, well, we're going to move on to the other Lisson gallery space on 24th Street and see some of the more recent pieces. Fasten your seatbelts. Okay, well, we went up the street and around the corner to the 24th Street branch of Lisson Gallery. Well, this is a wonderful installation. We'll start our viewing here. It's titled Spoonful, 2018, oil and linen. This is 80 by 80. Well, as I said, it's interesting to note the changes in the kind of the distilled compositions and approaches that Stanley's new paintings have taken. And one thing is that I think because Stanley is such a pure colorist, he's really reduced his approach down to a very purely coloristic thing. And his horizontal lines are also interesting. I like that little chunk of light blue there. And yeah, if you spend a little time looking at these, you see that there are a lot of little tweaks, like right there. Okay. So he's kind of laid in that little line there out to the edge from that kind of turquoise blue. Stanley is such an incredible colorist, and he really has reduced things down to the point where he can really play with straight, flat planes of color. I guess if you were a musician, you'd be saying these were pure notes, and I guess within the notes you have tone and timbre and rhythm. And well, even something that looks as simple as this, though, has got some nice things happening. It's titled Bird Watching, 72 by 72. Well, yeah, Stanley's a wonderful guy. I was down at a panel discussion, and I think Barry Swabsky had organized the publishing of a series of art books. Okay, so that's nice. We've got kind of a carry on from this yellow square up there to the top of the black. Anyway, Barry Swabsky had organized a panel discussion. I think there was Peter Haley, John Yao, a couple of other people. And as we were all waiting in line, Stanley came in and walked by, and I swear Stanley could run for the mayor of New York and he would win, because everybody wanted to jump out and shake his hand. This is titled Stay Song, 40 by 40. You know, some of his more intimate-sized pieces are also very nice. And I will call your attention to his surface. He's used a very flat surface, so he's using a lot of terp or paint thinner. And most of these areas are just one shot. Now, I tried to talk to him about his painting technique, but like a lot of painters, they kind of they don't want to let their special recipes and their ideas get away too easily. So he was pretty cagey, but you can see that a lot of this is just one shot, one color, and that gives you a certain kind of transparency that is almost impossible to get if you start layering. However, you get a whole different set of coloristic responses if you do start to overlay. Also, in a lot of this new work, I'm noticing these kinds of relationships and these forms. Okay, so you've got two different colors of red, but you have a kind of little cruciform in there. And that dark green horizontal line with a little chunk up in the corner kind of makes that sing. This is titled Stay Song 31. Okay, so this is interesting. This orange upper left-hand corner kind of extends along, and rather than having a real hard line there, that kind of section encompasses these other two squares. You know, and I was thinking that it's great to see someone like Stanley get the kind of attention that he's been getting recently. I've mentioned with a couple of other painters that I've kept track of over the years. It's titled We Song. One of them is Mary Heilman, another wonderful painter, a great colorist. And, you know, she was working, I think she came from California, came to New York in maybe the late 60s. Kind of a California hipster here in the West Village. And she got some attention for her early work in some of her performances, and she was kind of, I believe at that point, very involved in ceramics and other things, but she said as a kind of a resistance or a response to all of the macho minimalist people like Richard Serra and Robert Morris that she decided to paint. And well, she painted and painted and painted. And like a lot of people, at some point, you get to be a little older and people don't pay attention to you, but she kept painting and painting, and she was teaching, and at some point her students brought her to the attention of Pat Hearn, who was a young gallerist from the East Village, and Pat Hearn could see that this was good stuff, and so she started showing her. And so, well, about the time Mary was getting ready to retire from teaching, she suddenly became the hot young painter in town. And there's a very similar story with a lady named Joyce Pensato. She worked and worked and worked and painted and was out in Williamsburg. This is titled The Secret of Black and Song and Laughter, 2018. This is 96 by 96, so this is an 8-foot square. Anyway, Stanley, I saw an article on one of the art blogs where they're saying Stanley has finally seen his breakthrough, but he's in his 70s. However, he looks pretty good. Looks pretty darn good for someone in their 70s. And, but I think it takes a lot of time to actually get to a point where you can approach painting of this kind of simplicity with the kind of mastery of color. And you've learned enough about your materials and your composition, your desires, your means. It's titled In Color, 2018, Oil on Linen. Okay, so yeah, I'm kind of liking these new things where you've got the color bands that goes up around the corner. Like I said, you could spend a lot of time looking at his little tweaks and little variations on a theme. Yeah, if you were a jazz musician, this would be when you kind of turn up a note at the end of a riff, or maybe you take a little more time with a pause than people might expect. Okay, well, I'm a big fan of blue, so we'll look at this a little bit. So I was talking about the way that he's doing these very sophisticated, very subtle variations on colors. Now, if you look at this, you'll see there's a red form on the left-hand side of the composition, and then you've got kind of a blue with allegorical shades going off on the right side. But let's look at this red a little closer. So there's a very subtle shift between the red square and this line. Another very slightly keyed shift there. You've got a slash of orange. I like the little white edge there. Into that red. You know, I'm kind of liking his little holes at the corners. That's nice. And then you've got these blues. And yeah, boy, as a fan of paint, I could sit here and try to think whether he got that from a pure cobalt blue, whether he mixed that down with a ultramarine. And yeah, also the underpainting kind of changes the quality and the characteristic of the top layer. Okay, so this one is our last piece. Mingus. This is 2018. Okay, so we've got some tertiary colors here. We've got kind of a earth green and burnt sienna. Also, he's gone back to little thinner lines here on some of his horizontal sections. Oh, and I like the rivulets of solvent that have washed away the underpainting. Yeah, okay, this is interesting. So we've got our dark green line at the bottom of that horizontal stripe. We've got a kind of a lime green in the middle, another dark green, and then the dark green kind of comes into this kind of a sap green square. James Kalm reporting on Stanley Whitney in color. It's a 2-gallery show here at the Lisson Gallery, 138 10th Avenue, and now we're at 504 West 24th Street. And you can like this, share, recommend it to your friends. Do all those other things on social media that people do to connect. You can leave your thoughts, ideas, comments, criticisms, critiques, reviews, suggestions below. And I never ask you to donate money. I don't have a Patreon account. I've been doing this for 14 years and I've never asked for money, and I hope I never will have to ask for money. But I tell you, I do ask people to thank you, Kate. Oh, thank you. That was sweet. Very sweet.